you always hear how expensive college is. And, it wasn't cheap when I went to school 30 years ago, but okay, I took it a little bit with a grain of salt. I thought, people complain about the price of X, Y, and Z, and college is just one of those. But when he hit high school, I thought, well, I probably better check this out. And the numbers just shocked me. I just could not believe how much college had gone up since I was in school at that time, about 25 years before. And I thought, how are we going to do this? I absolutely was dead set against him having student loan debt, but we had not prepared financially for it. I had a few changes in our financial situation that we weren't able to prepare probably as like I had thought we would be able to at that point. And then when I saw that, I was already behind what I had thought, and then I figured out, I'm even further behind than I realized. So I kind of gathered myself together and said, okay, well, I know scholarships are out there, so let me look into that.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dad Hat. Today's guest is author and entrepreneur Dave Peterson. He hosts the podcast Your Daily Scholarship. His website is nodebtcollege.com, and his book, which can be found on Amazon, is titled Debt Free College. Welcome, Dave. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, happy to have you. So you're doing a lot of great things, getting scholarships for kids. Tell us a little bit how that journey started for you.
Yeah, so it really started with my own son. When he got into high school, I realized college was on, pretty close on the horizon. And, you always hear how expensive college is. And, it wasn't cheap when I went to school 30 years ago, but okay, I took it a little bit with a grain of salt. I thought, people complain about the price of X, Y, and Z, and college is just one of those. But when he hit high school, I thought, well, I probably better check this out. And the numbers just shocked me. I just could not believe how much college had gone up since I was in school at that time, about 25 years before. And I thought, how are we going to do this? I absolutely was dead set against him having student loan debt, but we had not prepared financially for it. I had a few changes in our financial situation that we weren't able to prepare probably as like I had thought we would be able to at that point. And then when I saw that, I was already behind what I had thought, and then I figured out, I'm even further behind than I realized. So I kind of gathered myself together and said, okay, well, I know scholarships are out there, so let me look into that. And that was really the start of it. By his junior year, we got him to start applying for scholarships. And I tell people the one regret I have is that we didn't even start sooner, because there are scholarships out there I have found in my journey over the last 5 years that you can even start like in third grade. But, my son started his junior year and he pretty quickly won a couple. And we thought, okay, this is promising. So we kind of went all in on it, especially at the start of his senior year. We even allowed him to quit his part-time job because we thought we're just going to put all our chips in on this. And it really paid off for us. By the time he graduated high school, he had won more than a dozen scholarships. I don't know the exact amount, but the dollar total was over $50,000. Today, he's a college sophomore, and he just won another one over this last weekend. So he's now over $80,000. And we have not had to pay a dime for college. That includes tuition, room, board, books, fees. Yep, absolutely. So he's even gotten some money in his pocket that, he uses, for some fun things. And also the school he goes to is 1,000 miles door to door from our home. So, it's paid for gas and airline tickets. And, it's just been an incredible blessing for our family. He's a sophomore now, so we're like 2 years removed from his senior year. And when our friends and family saw these numbers coming in around the end of his senior year, I started getting phone calls and emails. Hey, how did you do this? So I spent about a year working with friends and family, seeing if what I did with my son was just a fluke or did it help other people. And we found that, I developed a methodology. I developed kind of a system that's very repeatable. So some of our friends and family had some success, and I thought, okay, let's take this a little broader. So I wrote the book, Debt Free College, and the feedback on it was very positive. But the one thing that people said was, okay, now I know how to do this, but I just don't have the time. So can you continue to work with my kid? And that was where I got the idea for the Dave the Scholarship Coach. I actually had one of the people I was working with say something like to his parents, Dave told me to do this. And they're like, Dave who? He's all, Dave the Scholarship Coach. And so I was like, oh, that's a cool brand. So I'm gonna capture that. So I probably owe that kid some royalties, but so yeah, that was kind of the impetus. And so I've been working with people other than my son for about 2 years, and only for about a year what I would call professionally, taking payment for my services and kind of formalizing things, productizing things. So we're coming up on just about a year after the book has come out and when NoDebtCollege.com launched.
Wow, that's amazing. That's quite amazing. So one of the interesting things that I've heard you say a couple times is he won a scholarship. So can you tell us, is it a competition and how does that competition work?
Yeah. So there's really 3 different types of scholarships. I'll break those down just real quickly. So the first would be needs-based scholarships, and those are for people who have lower income or lower family assets. We're not rich by any means, but the floor is pretty high for what's considered, to get needs-based. So we didn't qualify for any of that. No, I'm happy to work with people who do, but it's not really my main focus. The second group of scholarships are what I call merit-based scholarships, and these are ones provided by the colleges themselves, and therefore talent, whether that's academic talent, athletic talent, artistic talent. And when you hear people say, I got a full ride to XYZ college, that's typically what they're talking about. Those types of scholarships, you earn those in a very similar way to the ones that I primarily focus on. But my main focus are private outside scholarships. So these are ones that are offered by not by colleges, but by philanthropic organizations or for-profit companies as kind of a marketing tool. And that's really been our focus. That's where my son found the most success. And so, yes, that's a long way to answer your direct question of, yes, it is a competition. It's very often based on, it's always based on an application. There's typically an essay or some kind of project component. If it's not an essay, it might be putting together like a creative video. There are some like art competitions as well. But most of them also will take other factors into account. So your academics, your extracurriculars, your volunteer efforts, work experience. So yes, it definitely is a competition. One of the strategies I employ is to find scholarships that match the student's profile. So, if they're into, my son was into history. So we focused a lot on history and social studies type scholarships. But, the next step beyond that is saying, all right, is this a high profile scholarship? Is there a lot of competition? Or is it maybe a little less known? And if it's a little less known, we put that at the top of the list because you're competing against fewer people.
Wow. Okay. So you really are a coach.
Yeah. I have taken on that moniker. It was hard for me in the beginning, especially working with kids who were, my friends' kids. I didn't feel it was my place to kind of, I hate to use the word discipline, but, keep them on track for what they needed to do. And that was a mistake on my part. So especially as I've started being a little more professional about this and more formal, I do have a more formal coaching aspect, and I'll set up milestones, very manageable small tasks for the students to complete in a pretty short time so that we can hit the deadlines for their applications.
And that's probably a core piece of your method, right? Is making sure they're on task and going through a specific routine to make sure they get what they're looking for. So can you go into a little bit more of that method without giving away your product?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll say the one thing is the earlier I can start working with the student, the better. And something that I do for people who are maybe earlier in the high school career, freshmen, sophomores, is I will even give a little bit of guidance for the student and family about things like course selection, extracurricular activity selection, because what we want to try to do ultimately by about the second half of junior year is build what I call a student's personal narrative. And this methodology is what you're going to find people in the college application space. They use very much a similar methodology. So that the student's personal narrative is built on what I call the 5 pillars. So academics, extracurriculars, volunteerism, leadership, and work or employment experience. And so the more you can have something in each pillar, the better. And the more you can tie those pillars together around a common theme, the better. So that's one of the main reasons I try to work with students as early as possible. But junior year is really a critical year. And something that I found over the last year since I've started, doing this professionally is that far too many people make 2 big mistakes, and they're related. One is that they wait until their senior year. And then at that point, they're very involved in the college application process. And so scholarships get put to the back burner. And by the time they finish the applications and they feel like they, quote, have time for scholarships, they have missed the biggest scholarship opportunities of their lives. More than half of the money that's available is going to be that first half of senior year. They make the mistake of missing it, first of all, but they also make the mistake of, because they haven't been involved in this world, they're still on the on-ramp when they need to be at full speed on the interstate by the time they're getting into it. Then the other mistake is related, and they rely too much on the merit scholarships, so the scholarships that the colleges are giving. So for us, if we had done that, we would still be 2/3 behind. We would have had either out of pocket or in debt 2/3 of what my son has spent so far. 2/3 of his scholarships have come from private outside sources. So people are leaving a lot of money on the table. In fact, I just had an article come out today where I referenced a different article, and it's estimated that $100 million in scholarships are left on the table every year.
Wow, that's a big number. And before the show, we kind of spoke about the price difference in college education between when you were in school and now when your son has gone to school 25 years later. So another thing that you mentioned earlier was a personal narrative. I think there's some buzzwords going on right now, personal brand and that sort of thing. Is that similar to what you're doing for your clients?
It is. You, as a student, you are very much marketing yourself, and this applies whether you're trying to get into a specific college or win a scholarship. It's very much a marketing play, and so you are painting a picture of yourself, and you want to do that in the most positive light for yourself. But you also can make some tweaks, if you know what you're doing, so that without any difference in who you are, you just present yourself maybe a slightly different way that's tailored to whoever's looking for it. So if you're applying to a specific scholarship that maybe a law firm, and they focus on like divorce law, and you're the child of a divorced parents, that's the angle you'd want to take in your application, in your essay. So that's just one example. But yes, it's very much a personal brand, a marketing type situation.
So you're almost, with that scenario, you're almost gaming the system a little bit, trying to, position your clients in a way that is going to give them the maximum potential to receive that scholarship.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say I was gaming the system. I think it's very similar to like if you're going into a job interview. And that's actually one of the things I tell the students I work with is research this organization, look at their website, find out what they're about. And even though the scholarship might say it's, about one thing, you always want to tie it back to the mission and what this business does, or this philanthropic organization. One of my favorite scholarships is offered by the VFW. So it is an essay contest technically. And so you don't want to go in there with a negative view of veterans or the military. Like, even if maybe that's your personal perspective, I've seen students do well criticizing some of the nation's policies, but in the essay, they are always very, very respectful of veterans. So, again, it's tailoring your message. And just like a job interview, you want to show that you know what this organization does, and that when they're giving you a scholarship, you're almost like a brand ambassador for them. So that's kind of the mentality you want to take is, do they want me representing them for the next year?
So yes. Due diligence. You're doing your due diligence for that particular scholarship. Perfect. Okay. So I want to give you a scenario. I have a brother that is currently in school. He's got I spoke with him this morning about $22,000 in college debt. My first question is there anything to be done about the debt he's already accrued, and what should he do moving forward to accrue less debt?
Yes, and the answer to both those questions is really the same thing. While he is still in college, he has the opportunity to continue to win scholarships. Before we started recording, I mentioned to you my son just picked up a new scholarship literally like 3 days ago. He's a college sophomore. So while I do emphasize the fact that your biggest opportunities during your senior year of high school, there is still a ton of opportunity out there when you're still in college. It is a little bit more of like a one-off thing. It's going to take, more of a constant flow. You need to make it part of your daily routine almost. But yes, there are scholarships out there that he could apply for that he can use moving forward for the rest of his academic career. But there are also a lot of scholarships that pay the winner directly. So it's not paid to the school, and they have no way of forcing how you use that money. So literally a student could go out and blow it, a night partying if that was what they wanted to do. But the smart people are putting in the bank or paying off debt. It's been so long since I had my own student loans. I don't remember like what is allowed in terms of paying off a student loan while you're still in school. But worst case scenario, if he wins some scholarships to pay him directly, he sets it aside. And then once he is allowed to start paying, he just pulls it out and pays it off.
Wow. Okay. That's very interesting. And that's great work. So let's say we have an audience member that's wanting to use your services. How do they get in touch with you, or how do they do that?
Yeah, the best way, both ways are going to end up with an email to me. They can go to my website, nodebtcollege.com, and at different times I'll have different offers pop up. Right now it's a free report on the 5 pillars of a winning scholarship application. To get that, they have to give me their email address. When I get that, I'll send them a thank you along, with that report. But they could also just email me directly, dave@nodebtcollege.com, and say, I'd like a free consultation. I spend anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour learning a little bit about that person, their student. That's kind of the first half of that call. The second half will be here are my services. I have a different service for every level of student, from freshmen and sophomores to high school juniors, seniors, and then something different for college students. So the pricing for each of those is a little different because my workload's a little different based on the student's age. So that's why I don't just, put a product up on the site for people to choose. I need to make sure I point them to the right direction. And then even if they end up not working with me, I still, as a thank you for their time, I'll send them a list of 2 to 3 scholarships that match their student's profile, just to thank them for that 30 to 60 minutes they shared with me.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So let me ask you this. You've mentioned being a senior in high school, and I think we can all assume we've been talking about public school or private school. Do you feel like there's the same amount of availability for scholarships for homeschool kids?
Yes, I think there is. there's kind of two aspects to that. There are actually some scholarships exclusively for homeschool students. So those, if a student is homeschooled, that's part of my directive. One of the services I provide is actually finding the scholarships and then helping the student determine which one's the best fit to start with. So yeah, if a student's homeschooled, those will be ones that go on the top of the list. But even if those didn't exist, almost every scholarship that I've seen still welcomes homeschool students. Now they're going to want to make sure that you are you're actually doing homeschool. Unfortunately, there are some people who kind of abuse that. It's not a lot, but they're going to want to see transcripts. They're going to want to verify that if you say you have a 4.0 as a high school student, they'd like to see some way to verify that. We didn't homeschool, so I'm not quite as familiar with what that means. But I know having a formal transcript that even if it's, the parent put together themselves, that's an important piece. So, but yes, the short answer to your question is homeschooling really does not deter. And in fact, it probably might give a few more opportunities just because of, those scholarships exclusively for homeschoolers.
I kind of want to shift this conversation to you being a father personally a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit about your fatherhood strategies, which is something I like to do on this show. So, in just a few words, tell us who you are as a father.
I think I've changed as a father. My son just turned 20 this year, and we waited 7 years from the time my wife and I were married before our son was born. And looking back, a lot of that, I'm glad that we did, because I was an only child and kind of had that only child syndrome where it was probably a little bit selfish. And so I probably wasn't in the spot where I would have been a good dad. I will also say I probably was not the best dad when he was very young. I didn't change a lot of diapers. I left a lot of that to my wife. But as he got older and became more of a person, I'll say, and you could see a personality develop, we have become super close. We're a very close family. I've always felt, it's my responsibility to provide for him and to protect him. And I think those are probably the two kind of key words for what I feel like I am as a father. I also, I have a certain value set that I want to. I've always tried to share with him, but I've also tried not to force those values on him. Now, I don't think that there's any such thing as value-free parenting. Even, whether you're a Christian or a person of a different faith or an atheist, that value system you're implementing on that child, whether you think you are or not. So, we're a Christian family. We took him to church pretty regularly, and we pray at home and we discuss theological issues. But that was always, we also realized that we could not make him believe something. We could present what we believe, but ultimately he has to believe those things himself. So, there's a guidance aspect, but at some point you do have to let go, and you're dealing with a person with their own agency. So, all you can do at some point is guide, and then you let them fly, and hopefully they land in a good spot.
Yeah, I love that word guide, because I think that is the correct adjective when, because you see it all the time. Fathers being overbearing and really trying to create a replica of themselves or a better version of themselves, which is probably not the right strategy. But you also said something else, value-free parenting. And I think that's the concept of you're not, putting your values on your child directly, even though what you mentioned was that's exactly what you're doing. That child is listening to you, watching you, observing what you do each and every day. Therefore, by osmosis, those values are being implemented in their system. Would you say that's kind of accurate there?
That is 100%. That's 100% true. And, that I didn't realize how much kids pick up on even at a very young age. And um, so one of my faults is that I have a bit of a sailor's mouth. And my son picked up on that at a very young age. That especially comes out in me in traffic, and he couldn't have been 3, 4 years old, and he said that guy is a, and my wife was ready to throw me through the window. She's just like, he should not be saying that. He should not be hearing you say that. And yeah, so kids pick up on stuff very, very quickly. And that was actually a learning moment for me, that I needed to be more diligent about the example I was setting. And I think that probably is where I started taking being a father more seriously, apart from just like the financial and kind of basic, human needs stuff. I always made sure he was clothed and fed and all that. But I took on the moral and you know, the relational aspect a lot more seriously at that point.
So, you've dubbed yourself provider and a little bit of protector through this episode so far. Would you say that, your son picked up on, you were working hard to be that provider? You were, being diligent and making sure you are that protector. Those are values that he picked up on, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so. I mentioned that, we're a Christian family. We're also, I think I would call us liberty lovers, whatever that means. And that's a value that he's picked up and run with. A lot of, his academic career, even scholarships, have kind of been liberty focused. So yeah, it's, whatever it is that you are exemplifying around your kids, they're going to pick up on that. And like you said, I was never trying to, turn my son into a better version of me. But he has actually turned into that. We're very similar. We have similar temperaments, similar interests. Behind me, there's posters from concerts, and we share musical tastes. So it was not something that was consciously forced on him. It was just picked up on it. It was in the atmosphere, and I think whatever you put out into the atmosphere around your kids, they're going to gravitate towards.
Definitely. So, we spoke earlier about your business and, finding scholarships for your clients and stuff like that. Has that business changed your parenting style any? I know he's in college, and maybe what most people would say is, your parenting days are over, but I'm a believer that they're never over. You're always going to be the father of your son. So would you say your parenting style has changed with your business?
I don't know if the business has changed my parenting style. As I've worked with a lot of other young people on scholarships, it's made me appreciate the hard work that he put in. There were times when I probably crossed a line where I was making him do more scholarships than was reasonable. And I will also say most of those ones that, I was pushing that he didn't want to do, he didn't end up winning anyways. I was pushing him down a rabbit hole of just trying to chase the next scholarship. And he taught me to be selective. He's like, this one's interesting. This one matches well to me. Let's go with that. And, at some point I realized I need to show some grace, and, he's not a robot. He's a human being, and scholarships are not his entire life. So I don't know that the business portion of that, other than just really appreciating, the work that these kids are putting in. They have far more pressures on them than I had when I was a kid.
That's a common theme that's coming up on my show, is the child taught the parent something. And for some reason, I love to hear it every single time, because it just makes me feel like, you're growing as a parent, they're growing as a child. It's just great news in my opinion. So that's great to hear. So you mentioned the pressures they have. The children of today have more pressures than you had when you were younger. Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, it's everything. It's so many kids. My generation was kind of the first where mass divorce was happening, and we've moved way beyond that to where, like, a lot of kids don't even know one, maybe even both of their parents now. So you have a lot of family pressure that we just didn't have previously. Social media is obviously a huge one. They're influenced by so many different people, from their peers to people trying to sell them something. And yeah, we had people trying to sell us candied cereal when we were watching GI Joe cartoons, but like it wasn't in your face 24/7. It's just constant. And then kind of at the other end of the spectrum, you have so much pressure for kids to get into the top schools, to achieve academically and outside the classroom. And I think that has really grown quite a bit over the last 30 years. Kind of that helicopter parenting is not quite the correct term, but just really pressuring kids to excel kind of beyond what might be reasonable, I think. And that also often takes the shape of, if it's not academically, it might be sports focused, or whatever avenue a child is into. There's just a lot of pressure for them to succeed. Now, I may be a little bit blinded to some of that when I was a kid, because I was a little bit of a goof off. I didn't take school seriously. I didn't take really anything seriously. So I just kind of skated along. So maybe some of those pressures were there and I just didn't know it. But kids just really face so much today that, I'm a big fan of the original version of the TV show, The Wonder Years. I watched that. I've been binging that every night before I go to bed. And it's like, that generation was the generation before mine, or at least the one that's depicted. And it's like, they seem to have so much more of an idyllic life than I had. And now I look back on when I was a kid, and man, I would not trade being a kid today for anything from what I had. Even something as simple as just being able to go outside and play it just doesn't exist anymore. Kids are inside on a screen 24/7, and they're not out in the real world. I find that so sad.
It's terrible. And, part of the reason why I hope people listen to this show is to hear about people that are not doing that. Obviously, I think that a conscious parent needs to be aware of screen time. Obviously, I mean, that's a huge one. We know now that it's addictive. Scientifically proven that the screen is addictive, and limiting the screen time is a good thing. But I also think that we might have a problem with parents not engaging enough with their kid to create those critical thinking skills that are necessary for people to live life outside of the screen. And, the more and more YouTube and social media and all of these places gain attention, the more the kids believe that this is real life. And that's one of the scariest things, that I fear. And, something in previous conversation, you spoke about the extreme of maybe having too much pressure, like we've been talking about, on a child to succeed. But I also think that the opposite of that extreme is affecting, people greatly. People, it's okay not to do poorly, or I mean, and it is okay, it is okay to lose a soccer game. It is okay to make a B or a C in a class or a paper. But what's not okay is to not have any sort of recourse or way to get better. And I worry that, the nature of America is, the nature of victimhood. Who is the greatest victim? And I believe that, we need to nip that in the bud as soon as we can as a culture.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm probably my view is probably a little bit skewed because I am working with more high achieving students. So they're probably battling that one end of the spectrum where they feel that pressure to succeed all the time. But yeah, I know there's a whole other group of kids who have just kind of dropped out. And I don't necessarily mean they've dropped out of school, although maybe they have, but like they've just dropped out of life. And, it's sitting on a screen, eating fake food and, they're just not, they're living almost, this analogy has been overused, but like, they're almost like in the Matrix. They're just kind of, they're plugged in and, there's no motivation, there's no ambition that they have. And, yeah.
Yeah. That's not an analogy. The Matrix, that's, whether you have seen the movies and believe in the fairy tale of the Matrix and whatnot, the idea of that happening is very much real. So, man, do you believe that screen time is hurting more than it is helping kids of today?
Yeah, if I have to go one way or the other, I'm going to say it's hurting them more. We literally have every bit of human knowledge in our pocket, and we choose to have Twitter fights and we choose to watch stupid videos. So the problem is not access to knowledge. The problem is a failure to want to access knowledge. It's learning and bettering yourself is hard. And that's, you had talked about things our kids have taught us. And one of the things my son picked up on since he's left home and gone to college is he started working out, and he's lost a good amount of weight. And he is now in the kind of that coach role for me where he's trying to motivate me to do the same. So, I know that it's not been easy for him, and I am just super proud of him. And I have to admit, he has not gotten me as motivated as I know he would want. But it's maybe motivated me in not quite the formal exercise way, but I'm getting outside of the house more and have gotten into like gardening and permaculture stuff. So I'm not as sedentary as I used to be. So
yeah, vitamin D is important,
100%.
Man. I'm sure you know this, but he's trying to motivate you because he loves you. He wants you to live longer. He wants you to be around.
Yeah. He has said that. That is true. Yep.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay. So, you guys are faith-based. You guys are Christian, and does he go to a school that is Christian-based? And how is his experience in college with y'all's beliefs?
Yes, he did decide to go to a Christian school. Those were not the only ones on the table for us. I'll be honest, we focused more on the liberty aspect. Every college that he was serious about had some tie to liberty. It just so happens the one he picked hit both those boxes. So it's a Christian school that has a very strong liberty focus. So yeah, in terms of his faith, man, that was the first thing we noticed the first time he came back during his first semester. They give them a fall break. So when he came back, like he was talking theological issues, and it sounds like these kids all take their faith very seriously. You don't have to be a Christian to go to this school, but most of the kids are. But they come from different Christian traditions, everything from Catholic to Eastern Orthodox to the various Protestant denominations. And they're having very deep theological discussions. And I was just so impressed that, while we maybe instilled a Christian foundation in him, he has learned so much. And, he has some ideas, that don't necessarily align with ours, what you might call doctrinally. But we're okay. He's still in that broad Christian tradition. So we're good with that.
Yeah, he's sorting it all out for himself.
Yes, absolutely.
That's awesome to hear. And, to hear a student come back from college, without blue hair and crazy ideas is a win in itself, right?
Yes. Yeah. And, the very first chapter in my book is a discouragement from going to college. I wanted to put that on the table right away. I think far too many people go to college. Too many people go to college for the wrong reasons. And obviously, people are taking on way too much debt to go to college. I don't think college is the only road. And for many people, it's not even the best road. Unfortunately, it's presented as the only and best road to many people. And I don't think that's the case. So yeah, one reason that we did focus on the liberty aspect and maybe to a lesser degree the Christian aspect of which school he was going to is we didn't want him coming back a completely different human being than he left, and he's come back a different but better person, which is great. So saying you don't want your kid to come back different, that's probably not incorrect. If they're not coming back different in some way, then college is obviously not worth it, because college should be transformative, but they should come back a better version of themselves. And that is what he has done. So we are just so blessed. We had the opportunity to, I mentioned that he won another scholarship over the weekend, and we went to that awards ceremony, and two of his professors were there, and we had the opportunity to have lunch with one of them. And oh my gosh, that guy, man, I love that guy. He is smart. We talked about some concerns that we had about the college, and he addressed them forthright. He shares some of the same concerns, and we just walked away just so impressed with him and the college overall. So
it's great news. So you mentioned earlier that people go to college for the wrong reasons. What's the right reason?
Well, I do think it varies depending on the student. There are some people who might want to become a doctor or a lawyer, and there's no way to be a doctor or a lawyer without a college degree. So I think that is a right reason. There are other students who maybe don't have a quite as narrow a career path, but they're interested in learning. And as long as they understand the opportunity cost, the 4 years away is not just the cost of whatever you pay out of pocket to go to college, but it's also the 4 years foregone of what you would do otherwise, which is hopefully be gainfully employed or doing something useful. And as long as students are aware of that and they're making that conscious choice, I think that's a good reason to go to college as well. I might be naive, but I'm still a believer in a liberal education, and I mean that liberal in the old sense. The liberal arts type degree. So, I think learning for its own sake is a good thing. But we do live in a different time where practically somebody who wanted to could gain all that knowledge without going to college, and I'm very aware of that. Ironically, my son's goal is to become a college professor, and I just keep reminding him, by the time he is ready to be a professor, colleges might not exist. Or at least they will be very different than they are now. And, like I had said earlier, we have all the knowledge in the world in our pocket on our phone. And if people determine to leverage that in the right way, they can learn as much or more than they will going to college.
I was going to push back earlier about with the screen time question. You had said that, screen time's probably making kids worse off, or at least, it's the pendulum's over on that area right now. I would say, as a person that only, I think I have, 25, 30 credit hours and did not pay attention in college and was not a good college student at all. I would say 90% of what I know today has been learned through the internet. And, I'm very aware of the risk I take in gaining knowledge from the internet, with false information out there and stuff like that. But there's a vast vast arena of information that is to be gained via the internet. Wouldn't you say that?
Oh, yes, 100%. I think my concern goes back to something I said earlier in that, we have all this knowledge out there at our fingertips, but most people don't choose to access it. They would rather get into that fight on Twitter or watch cat videos or, whatever it is people watch on YouTube now.
So stupid. Sorry, I had to say that. I see it. I see those threads on Twitter. I'm like, what are y'all even doing? Do you feel better now that you've said, that you pooped on somebody else's idea? Is that what is going on?
I got off of all social media about 3 years ago. And one of my hesitations about starting a business was that you pretty much have to be on social media to market now, especially for something like what I'm offering. It's a virtual service. So I had to go back on, and I've had to be very what's the word I'm looking for? Very intentional about what I allow myself to get drawn into on social media. The only kind of extravagance I've allowed myself, aside from being in things that are directly related to college or parenting type groups, is that permaculture stuff that I'm into. So gardening type stuff. So it's if you can be disciplined and set limits, then yeah, it's not the screen, or it's not even necessarily social media. It's a discipline issue. And if you can be disciplined, whatever it is, for me, I could stand to lose a little weight. So I need some more discipline around my food choices. So, I don't think the internet and screens, they're just a tool like anything else. So they have no, I don't want to say value is not the right word, but they're not moral things. They're devoid of that. And it's how you use that tool. I can use a hammer to build a house, or I can use a hammer to hurt somebody with. And, it's the way you use that tool that makes the difference.
Great point, Dave. Thank you. Thank you for coming in with that. Hey, I don't mean to jump around a little bit, but you've said liberty and a few times in this show so far. Are you talking about individual liberty? Are you talking about liberty as a society? Tell me what you mean when you say that, please.
Yeah, so I would say both. I think every liberty starts at the individual level. I think the individual is the primary unit of society and of the world that we live in. We're individuals ourselves, and we act individually. I come from kind of the Austrian, Misesian, Rothbardian tradition of, humans act purposefully to achieve their own subjective ends. And then I also come at it from the Christian perspective of, certain ends are moral and certain ends are not. I don't really want political entities determining what's moral and what's not, because first of all, I think as a Christian, we all deal with the issue of being fallen, and therefore even the most well-intentioned person, when they're put in power, as Lord Acton said, power corrupts. So I don't wish to impose my quote morality on other people, but at the same time, I understand that the world's not value free, and everything that we do probably has a value proposition to it. So it's a difficult space, but yeah, kind of that's a backwards way of saying, yes, I value individual liberty. I'd call myself a radical libertarian. So yeah.
Interesting. So as a radical libertarian, if the libertarians were in charge of the United States currently, what would they change? They'd limit the government. That's a big one, right?
That's a big one. Man, I don't want to speak for all libertarians. So, I mean, the first part about being a libertarian is you have to disagree with every other libertarian. So, yeah, yep. No, libertarian infighting is a big thing. So I wouldn't presume and wouldn't want to speak for them. But yeah, I think probably most libertarians would say that the government is too big and does too much and is too involved in people's lives.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think that you know, the best thing that we can do is do our best to create strong individuals. Um, the the institutions and the different groups scares me a little bit because I feel like tribalism is affecting our culture in a way that is it's very scary to me because I realized at a late age 17, 18, 19 years old that I wasn't taking on my own values. I wasn't creating my own values, if you will. I was taking the values of who I was around, and the saying, you are the average of the five people you hang out with or see the most, and the thing about the scary part about that is it's true, whether you like it or not, it's true. I think that, some people can stave off bad values, obviously, but at the same time, if you're born into a place or are inhabiting a place where the values are pretty poor, it's likely you're going to have pretty poor values also.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And yeah, I'm concerned about um, the tribalism and just we don't seem to have a common culture anymore. We seem to have several cultures, and I think there's a segment of libertarians that would cheer that. They would say that's individualism exerting itself, and to a degree that may be true, but I don't know how you can be a nation without some common values and some common beliefs. And somebody I like to listen to a lot has said that America has turned into Walmart with nukes. And what he means by that is that it's basically just a corporation with no shared values, with no common culture, and we're all just individual. You know, it's a very atomized thing where it's just kind of choose your own adventure, and you'll bump into different things as you go around, and do your best not to hurt somebody, I guess.
Yeah, I'll have to fumble around with that idea in my head for a little while because I'm not, I think there's got to be some sort of, I mean, if we care about our country as a country, then we have to have some assimilation, if you will. We have to share some values, right? I mean, the easiest ones are obviously don't steal, don't kill, those. That's pretty obvious, don't kill your fellow man, don't steal from your fellow man, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that should be like baseline before kindergarten type stuff. Yeah.
But but as you go deeper and deeper into all of the things that we argue about on a daily basis, is it right to let everybody think, or not let everybody think, but should everyone have their own idea of what's valuable and what's not valuable, what's good principles, what's not good principles? Or, should we try to, impose a common value system? I would personally say that we do need autonomy on creating our own values, but, some people would disagree with me thoroughly on that.
Yeah, well, I would argue that you can't force morality, and I kind of alluded to that earlier, where I said we of course took our son to church and we shared our Christian faith and values with him, but we realized at the end of the day we can't force him to be a Christian. That was one of the big problems with an earlier time in the church when they were trying to force Christianity at the point of a sword. Like, it's easy for somebody to say, okay, I'm a Christian, I give up. But if they don't really believe it, then they're not a Christian. And so what was the point other than exerting power? One thing that I don't understand about people, I have a lot of flaws, but one flaw I don't have is exerting power over people. I hate when people put their thumb on me, and to any extent I've ever done it, I've just felt terrible. Um, you know, I don't think you can force ideas on people. I think ideas have to win the day in the hearts and minds of people. That said, I think that we all need to do a better job of living out our values. And for us, that's meant cutting some subscriptions to certain media. At one point it was, like I said, I cut off having social media. And, everything that we do does have, I think, a moral component to it. And unfortunately, we do have to, there's a give and take with some decisions that everybody faces. But if you don't have a line in the sand, and you don't know where it is before you get there, you're going to cross it and you're going to have regrets after that.
Definitely. Good advice there for sure. Dave, you've explained a lot about scholarships. You've taken us through some great stories about, your personal experience as a father. I want to thank you so much for that. Let's just real quick, let's recap. The people that should go to college should be intentional about learning or have a specific career path. That's kind of what you've told us, right?
I think so. There might be some other good reasons to go to college that I haven't mentioned, but I think those are probably the two big ones. If you're just going to go to party or to get away from your parents, those are not good reasons. I'm not saying you can't have fun. And of course, I think getting away from your parents at some point is a good thing, but you can do those without college.
Right. Yeah. So socialization and networking and that sort of thing is honestly, but it shouldn't be the only reason you go to school, in my opinion. Right.
Yes. Yeah. Those should be kind of fringe benefits, I think, because you can capture those things in other ways, much cheaper ways.
Right. And just real quick, if someone wants you to be their scholarship coach, the best way is to go to your website, right?
Yep. Go to my website or drop me an email, dave@nodebtcollege.com. We'll schedule that free consultation. I'll learn a little bit more about that person, their situation, and tell them about my services and love to have them as a client. But if we don't, that's okay too.
All right, Dave. Thank you so much for being on the Dad Hat.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.